And here we go. Okay, I'd like to welcome everybody to the EDC meeting of Tuesday, May 11th, 6 o'clock, virtual meeting on the town WebEx system. So our first order of business is to do a roll call of all attendees. So I will go down my list. Please say here if you're here. So first on the list is Dave Hammond. That's me. I'm here. Kevin Bowdler,
I'm here.
Jim Lathrop,
Here.
Suzanne Lane. Not here at the present. Rich Balistraki. Oops. I think you just mouthed the word here.
Oh.
Here we go.
Here.
All right, very good. Thank you, Rich. Dan McFadden. Not here. Bill Hobbs. Not here. Virginia Abernathy. Not here. Pete Robinson.
Here.
John Godin.
I'm here.
Colin Hagan.
Here.
All right, very good. So seeing that we have a quorum, we're good to go. The first order of business is approval of prior minutes. So we had our regular meeting of April 13th, where we had two presentations. One regarding a proposal to add agriculture as an allowed use for the LI 130 off of exit 91, and a second presentation regarding establishing cultural districts within the town of Sterlington and whether or not we would want to pursue that. That was provided by Wendy Berry. So we had that meeting, and then we reviewed, team leaders reviewed their project progress. So we also, the agenda I sent out was updated by Cheryl to include approval of minutes. So the one that's posted on the website, I didn't resend it out, includes approval of minutes from April 8th. And that was a TC80 Gateway sub-team meeting that Kevin led. I believe John Godin may have been the only other EDC member present to that one. Kevin will give us an update later. The discussion involved primarily designing a survey to find out what people would like that neighborhood to be. Kevin will talk about that later, but that was a synopsis of the minutes. And then there was an April 22nd joint meeting between the Board of Selectmen and the EDC. Jim Lathrop and myself were present for the EDC, and that revolved around a discussion of getting a survey of a circus lot and other potential uses for and ideas for that circuits lot, and minutes were posted for that. So at this time, kind of, as a package deal, do I hear a motion to approve those minutes?
So I'll raise the motion to approve the minutes of the meetings of 4/8, 4/13, and 4/22.
Okay, and is there a second?
Second, Pete.
Are there any comments or revisions or changes that anybody feels are required before I pass those to ask Town Hall to post those as final? Hearing none, those minutes will be considered approved and be passed to file at Town Hall. So I see Suzanne Lane has joined. So member Suzanne Lane has joined the meeting for purposes of the recording, just to announce that as part of our roll call. Good evening, Suzanne. Thanks for joining. Okay, I'd also want to just, so just for anybody's curiosity, if you look at the pictures up above, you'll see Elsie Bissett has joined. She is a candidate for the EDC opening. We have one open position. So full disclosure, there are 3 candidates. Those will be considered by the Board of Select people. Elsie and the others will receive notification when they have when they're going to be up to the Board of Select people for consideration, and she can attend and express why she would like to be part of our EDC. I had a really nice conversation with Elsie, who has a lot of great previous experience in Killingly that's you know largely related to everything that we're working on. So Elsie is a fine candidate, and thank you for joining, Elsie. She wanted to see us in action, and she's very, very interested in joining our team. So welcome, Elsie. So I'm going to move on now to our new business, and we have a guest tonight. Sergio is back, representing an applicant for a reopening of the long vacant, kind of forlorn Sailor's Ed restaurant building that's been sitting there on Old Stonington Road for at least a decade in an empty condition, fenced off and everything else. So the applicant is interested in reopening that, and Sergio is going to provide us with an overview, and then what the EDC will, of course, can ask any questions. Sergio will answer, and what we would like to consider then is offering a letter of support for this long vacant stuck property, which is one of our areas of interest is to unstick stuck property. So with that, Sergio, would you like to give us the good news?
Thanks, Dave. For the record, and almost know me, Sergio Cerenzia with Cerenzia and Associates. I'm the president and principal of Cerenzia and Associates, a land surveying and engineering company located in Pakitaka, Connecticut. The plans I'm going to show you tonight were prepared by my office, and I am a registered professional engineer in the state of Connecticut. So the application which I'm presenting this evening is on behalf of my client and applicant, George Secaroli. He lives at 168 River Road in Stonington. He's a resident here. And he is looking to purchase the property from the Pappas Group, who is the current owner. As many of you may or may not know, the property, I'm going to see if I can share my screen here just to have something to speak to, and then I'll bring up my site plan. So right now, this comes up here.
Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm sharing now just the town GIS. Subject property is located at 29 Old Stonington Road. And as Dave had indicated, is the old Sailor Ed's, or in my time, it was the Tongue and Groove restaurant and nightclub, but I think most of you affectionately remember it as the Sailor Ed's restaurant. It's been sitting for quite some time in a pretty neglected state. Just to orient you, Old Stonington Road, off of Stonington Road, Route 1, you have I believe it's the Big Y is to the northwest. I think it's Mystic Flooring Company. Mystic Coastal Flooring, excuse me. Mystic Coastal Flooring over to the west of the property. You have the very popular Dog Watch, their second location. I believe it's a barbecue restaurant over on the southwest. Densmore Oil, which owns the Christmas tree, the little ornament shop there. I believe that you've probably seen this. There's plans to tear this down and build another structure there that's going to house both I believe it's a mixed use residential and office, so a couple of units possibly, or a unit. I'm not too familiar. I haven't studied this plan, but I know there has been some redevelopment. But this is the Densmore Oil Company. To the southeast is the Quambog Fire Department, and then directly to the east and I believe to the north as well is, I believe this is residentially, yeah, RC 120 residentially zoned property that's currently vacant. Also, Lamb's Way up to the off of Old Stonington Road and Chapman Lane. I believe these are relatively recent development. Some pretty high-end residential properties up in that area. So just to give you some orientation of the site. This is the GIS base map aerial. You can see that the site has one large building, which was the restaurant, a smaller outbuilding in the rear, and it's very close to a wetland complex on the easterly side, both actually freshwater and saltwater. You can kind of see the color differentiation. More or less, this is the freshwater section, and then it's tidally influenced beyond there. So I'm going to bring up my proposed site plan. See if I can share, and I'm going to reshare my screen once I bring up my site plan. Just give me one moment. Okay, this will just take a minute. So the site plan I've brought up, we did a relatively simple compiled site plan which identifies the existing structure. We've actually redefined the parking lot spaces, but we are not changing the extent of the pavement. The site's going to be renovated to including the building, landscaping. I haven't submitted those plans yet, but we are going to be doing some updated landscape plans so that you can get a really better feel of what the improvements are going to be. There's going to be some facade improvements to the building. It's either new siding, new paint, that kind of thing. Overall, just renovations to the site to improve it, because it's, as many of you know, it's been in a neglected state for quite some time, overgrown, cracked pavement. So my client intends to, in conjunction with reuse of the site, to improve it as well. This also identifies the tidal wetlands and the freshwater wetlands, portions of the freshwater wetlands. We're going to remain, you can see on this site plan, there's a 100-foot upland review area. We're going to remain outside of that area just to simplify our permitting process. No intention of going into that area so that we don't have to go get a wetlands permit. And the proposals that we have on site right now will also exempt us from a CAM, a coastal area management application. Anything that's taking place within jurisdiction is just a site renovation. Whatever was existing is just going to be improved upon. No expansion of an impervious area, no expansion of the building size, no more floor area. So we're pretty much just, my client wanted to keep this application very simple. The thing that I'd like to highlight was we are going for a special use permit. The restaurant use is pretty much grandfathered in as part of the special use permit for the site, but I will bring your attention to that my client is interested in doing some outdoor vendor use. So in addition to opening up the restaurant, reopening the restaurant, we do have this area outside of the 100-foot. It is within CAM jurisdiction, but these pretty much were just outdoor vendor space. So these are 12 by 12 tents that we're going to put up in the corner of the lot. We have identified that we have enough for a 100 restaurant, in addition to the prerequisite for the outdoor vendors. And sorry, these are 15 by 15 by 12. So we've got a pretty significant size tents along here, and pretty much folks will be able to park, near these vendors, and these will. I would assume these are going to mostly run on weekends, maybe during the week. There may be a farmer's market. It may be a craft, people selling crafts, things like that. But outdoor vending or vendors are allowed by special use permit under 4.4.3.18 under the zoning regulations. And we are zoned within a general commercial GC 60 zone, which allows it by special use permit. So more or less, we've accommodated all the parking right on site. The additions to the site, these are all going to be temporary tents, no very low intensity use. Likely they'll stay up over a weekend, and then the vendors will take them down once they're completed for their stay, and the restaurant will be functioning mostly 11. I think the hours of operation we identified were 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. typical lunch and dinner hours. The outdoor vendors may run, from like 9 a.m. to say 6 p.m. or when it gets dark, they might extend hours in the summertime. I've met with the police commission, or at least with the police chief. We have the police commission meeting this week. Their biggest concern, which I think is shared amongst those that have visited this area, is that dog watch, they don't really have enough parking, which ends up spilling onto the road in front of this lot. This lot, since it has not been used, does have a fence along it, and because to inhibit the access, so the liability of people parking in there. But the point we're going to be making to the police commission is that we're going to be able to accommodate all the parking for the restaurant, including the outdoor vendors, and should not need any street parking. However, we believe that street parking is perfectly legal and allowed, and is open to not only the owner of this lot, but others on the street that want to park in the vicinity. I do plan on meeting with the Quambog Fire District Fire Chief to alleviate any concerns that he may have with respect to any congestion on this street. As most of you may or may not know, there's two-way traffic coming from the northwest, but it's only one-way traffic. I believe I don't remember if it's in or out.
It's in. They don't want people leaving from that.
Right. Thanks, Dave. So
Yeah.
It's one way in. You can exit this way, and you can come in on the north side, but the southeasterly side only can come in. Thank you, Dave. So relatively straightforward. We don't think this is going to be it's going to impact on, there'll be, sure there'll be a traffic impact, but it's something that's already been a use there that we're just reinstating and reusing. We'd be tying into the all public utilities for this building, and the use for the vendors is relatively innocuous. Anyone that needs to use a restroom can go in and use the building facilities. They have areas to park, adequate places to walk around safely. So we feel it'll be an added amenity to the restaurant, having this outdoor vendor space as well. I was surprised, and I'd like to also kind of in a separate a separate conversation, which you may want to have, is I was surprised to see the regulations, how strict they are for outdoor vendors. And I don't know if it's something that your commission may want to take a look at, but each vendor, according to the zoning regulations, requires you have to have a requirement of 1,000 square feet per vendor, and that includes access space and the vendor itself. I don't know if many of you have probably been to farmers markets or small craft fairs and things like that. Virtual Art Festival in Westerly. Most of the people that have tents out there are in a 10 by 10 or a modest 15 by 15 tent, which is nowhere near the density of a requirement that the zoning requirements have outlined at 1,000 square feet per vendor. So whereas my client was kind of excited to do something along the lines of maybe 20, even 15, 20, 25 vendors to make this more of a destination. The zoning actually, after speaking with Keith and Candace, is restrictive, and I don't know if it's not on purpose, or I would assume so, to restrict the number of vendors that you can fit in a space. So we do meet the letter of the requirement. You can see we have here about 1,200 square foot per vendor, based on this dash line space. And we accommodate, I believe it's 4, let me just zoom over here. 4 spaces, plus 1 space for the vendor itself. So each one of these vendors also requires 5 parking spaces. So just with the 6 vendors, we need to accommodate 30 spaces. And then we have the rest of the spaces dedicated to a restaurant. When we were looking over this, it seemed slightly excessive for the use, but it's per the regulation, and we didn't want to go in for any variances to delay the potential for getting this approved so that my client can go forward with his purchase and sales on the property. So that was just a little aside on the vendor. I figured the EDC may be interested in knowing that in case this comes up for other applicants that are looking to do outside vending. It seems relatively prohibitive unless you have a lot of space to dedicate to just the outdoor vendor use. So with that, it's pretty.
Do you know? Sorry, do you know? Is that 1,000 square feet per vendor a GC60 thing, or is that a town-wide thing? And the reason I ask is because we've all been to Taste of Mystic or the art show in downtown Mystic, and there's no way it's 1,000 square feet. So I'm just, I don't know. That's okay because it's not on a private property, or yeah, I just don't.
I don't know. I haven't looked into that level of detail with respect to those.
Okay.
I don't know if it's under a special license when you do stuff like Taste of Mystic. Obviously, those do not meet 1,000 square feet per. It might have a special license for those events, but technically, it sounds like at least in the GC60, it's a requirement of the special. You need the special use permit to get the outdoor vending, and then it's applicable to any outdoor vendors. It's not just in this zone. I believe it's applicable town-wide wherever outdoor vending is allowed by the zoning code.
Okay.
I'm just doing a quick search right now, just so I can actually pull up the reference. But yeah, 6.6.11 specifically addresses outdoor vendors.
Okay.
Outdoor vendor is defined as individuals seeking to sell wares, produce, crafts, or any other merchandise from a non-permanent location on a private open lot or other location not in a public street or public sidewalk. Maybe because Taste of Mystic was done in a public street. Maybe.
Yeah. Yeah, that would make it okay, I'm sure, right? I mean.
So yeah, 6.6.11 regulates outdoor vendors, and
Okay.
there's specifically, I believe it says, yep, each vendor shall have a minimum of and more, if found necessary by the commission, 1,000 square feet of an area in which to locate, display, and to provide for pedestrian travel. So I thought that maybe that also interpreted to include the parking spaces. But even if you add in 4 parking spaces, it leaves you still 200 square feet or so to to take up. So I couldn't get a clear interpretation from Keith. Well, I did get a clear interpretation. He said 1,000 square feet is what it is, and it's defined as the display area and the pedestrian travel area.
Okay, I'll definitely read up on that a little bit and maybe talk to Keith also and see if I can get any more insight on that one.
Hey, Dave,
Yeah,
and just a question for Kevin Boulder in his backyard. What is it on the Stonington Farmers Market, which is that town? I guess that would be town property there. What would you say the spacing would be for those vendors?
I mean, I've never heard of this restriction before, Sergio. And for the Stonington Farmers Market, we simply write a letter to the First Select people and request use of the property for 3 hours every Saturday and give them the time period, and they basically probably stamp it. So again, it's a non-profit. Whether that's different, I don't know, but if it's whatever's written is what's written. But when we come to do the rewrite of the zoning laws, maybe it's one area which we should look at, because it does seem overly restrictive. And maybe there was some reason 30 or 40 years ago where they were trying to ban flea markets from popping up here and popping up there. But it does seem very strange and interesting. There's been no enforcement, and the fact that no one's ever said, "Oh, we've got to stop the farmers market," where there's that requirement, we come nowhere near being able to meet 1,000 square feet.
Yeah, Dave, I would agree if put that one on the list for the comprehensive rewrite for sure.
Yeah,
That
definitely.
seems really restrictive.
Yeah. I mean, there's more detail on outdoor vendors and the regulations than there are in some areas that could use a little bit more explanation. It's crazy. Sergio, anything else you want to share with us, or should we go to a round of questions and answers?
No, I think I covered everything. I think it's pretty straightforward. We're not proposing a heck of a lot except for the addition of the vendors, and I'd be happy to answer any questions or comments and take any constructive criticism on any ways we can improve our presentation to the PZC coming up.
Okay, so I'll go around and I'll call out members' names, and we'll do it that way so we're not talking over each other. And so to allow folks to gather their thoughts, I'll go first. And I guess the first thing, Sergio, is I don't believe it's been scheduled yet. So we don't know when the application is going to be considered at PZC yet, correct?
Most likely, it's going to be at the June 22nd meeting.
Okay.
My understanding is that the meeting on the 15th has been postponed to the 22nd. Keith just confirmed that this past week. So it's very likely that it'll show up on the agenda for the 22nd.
Okay, so just a couple of quick questions from me. One is on the parking. It would be good to make clear, if this is a true statement, that it's really shared parking. So whenever the flea market is operating, the restaurant is closed and vice versa. So is that something that would be a point that would help people get past the parking? So, thinking that there's 2 uses, so there's going to be overwhelming with parking, but not if there's only one of the uses operating at any one time. You mentioned the police, made a comment about, well, there's already a parking problem there. Well, that's not this applicant's problem. So I'm hoping that the police aren't thinking that they're going to submit, a negative, any kind of negative input into this application when it's no fault of this applicant that Dog Watch Barbecue has a parking issue. So I don't know if you got that sense from them. I mean, they should be supportive. So I'm hoping they're supportive, I guess.
Yeah, if I may, I have spoken to the chief, and they acknowledge that my client is not responsible for the parking issues that take place on Old Stonington Road. That being said, the police department also wants, not so much accountability, but just some to work with them, which I have no problem with. I've already informed my client, go talk to your neighbors, make sure it's clear that you're not going to have issues with them parking in front of the restaurant property, the on-street parking. So I think they're just trying to get ahead of any issues that may happen ahead of time, which I can appreciate. And they don't want to have to come here to police things, and they have other things better to do, because there is an emergency service that is on this road and needs to, I'm sure the fire trucks will get out however they need to, but we don't want a situation where the road is so congested that the emergency services can't get in and out. They also had concern when this was more of a nightclub, I think, of spillover the Landsway and loud, music, things that nature being played. But I think with reasonable hours of operation and considering that parking lot will now be open for the restaurant and the vendors, I think those concerns will be rather alleviated. And as you mentioned, it's not anything that really they will that they're going to be able to comment on, because we're providing adequate parking on site. To comment on the shared parking, I would agree that for the most part, these vendors are, depending on how successful they are and how successful the restaurant is, the shared parking is probably a decent model that we can make a case for. But they are going to have overlapping hours.
Okay.
And this place is, if the place is going to be busy, say on the weekends, I think the vendors might be as well. So I would suspect that Saturdays and Sundays are going to be busier, and those are going to be the peak times and hours. But maybe during the week it's a little bit less. Okay.
Just final question quickly. You mentioned, Tongue and Groove was a nightclub, and it got some bad, I think some bad blood between the neighbors. Didn't like that in that area. He doesn't plan, but from what I read, I don't think he plans on operating any. Does he plan on operating any live performance or anything like that?
Hasn't been discussed yet. I'm assuming that, if we were to, this is under a special use permit. I don't know if under the previous special use permit that the restaurant was allowed any amplified music or not. I would assume not. But that hasn't come up, and I don't think that, I don't think it would be a regular occurrence, because there's really no outdoor seating for this, for the restaurant. If anything, maybe it would be inside. And this restaurant is going to be probably typical of other Mystic restaurants that they're not going to be open with a bar scene late in the evening. My client actually said he would be offering up reasonable hours, 11 a.m. to 11 p.m. If it became a nuisance, they would close earlier, but 11 p.m. is pretty standard, maybe 10:30 for a later dinner crowd. But for the most part, typical lunch to dinner hours, especially in the summertime, I would assume they'd be extended hours.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't thinking it was outdoor music or anything, but it's what you mentioned earlier with, cars, people yelling in the parking lot and peeling out late at night type of thing was what the complaints were about. So that's just a watch out so that he knows that there's a history there. When he comes before the Planning and Zoning Commission, that could come up. So, all right, that's it for me. I'm going to go quickly down our list. Kevin.
I think he should issue hero awards, and I think that the potential owner for this property would be a great nominee for the 2020 Hero Award, because it solves so many problems. Sergio, I just wanted to clarify, I'm thinking about what we put in the letter, that if it wasn't for the special use permit for the outside vendors, would you even have to go to planning and zoning?
I don't believe so. I think if someone was going to buy this and just reinstate the restaurant, because my understanding is that special use permits run with the land, and it already has been an approved restaurant or grandfathered in with that respect, and we're not changing anything significantly. So I think it's the introduction of the outdoor vendors is really what's prompting to get this this additional special use permit.
Okay, and I guess if this wasn't grandfathered, I think this would probably be a tough sell now with the wetlands being so close. But I'm just thinking whether are we getting distracted by talking about, oh, we're changing the parking around, or we're going to make some nice changes to the building, when if we could just say this and nothing is changing, we're truly asking for outside vendors to be added as a special permit. And I don't know the right way to approach that letter, Dave, but I think from my view, the fact that we've got a property there, it's not producing any income or value for the town, then there should be no discussion about forcing owners to remove stuff which we don't like now that we approved 20 or 30 years ago, and we the town are better off having taxpayers using every available property and parking space that's already been built. No other comments from me.
Thank you, Kevin. Jim?
Kevin, those are some great comments there on that property. It just definitely compartmentalize the approach, I think, as Kevin suggested, I think would be a wise move. Also, two things. Just the idea that over time that this has been a marginal site to do business because of its lack of frontage on Route 1, like for instance, Dog Watch has on Route 1, you can have some signage. So it really becomes a destination. So anything you can do to enhance the ability of this property to attract business. For instance, if people go to the flea market or outdoor venue, then maybe they walk in and have dinner or lunch afterwards, depending on. So I think the overlapping hours are a plus from a business standpoint. The point that when businesses turn over in an existing space, it's not good for anyone because it leads to vacancy. So you want a business to have a long run in a location. You want to give it every advantage as possible. If there was a restaurant could serve breakfast, lunch, and dinner to increase its revenue per square foot, you could do that. So anything that augments that, maybe you can't say that to P&Z, but definitely work it in somehow in terms of the ability to keep this site vibrant and alive through any means possible. Second of all, I think you should emphasize the siting of your and perhaps you're already planning on doing that, but the fact that it's off the road, in back, less impact with the stuff across the street, less impact with everything, I think is maybe a good point of emphasis for you. That's all I have.
Great comments, Jim. Thank you. Suzanne?
All right. Sergio, just a couple of questions. Can you explain to me the traffic pattern again? So how do people access that street?
Yeah, let me
I haven't been down there in a while.
Let me bring up the GIS again. I think that'll be more effective. Just give me one moment, please.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're coming north or I guess westbound,
Mm-hmm.
Coming from say Pakitaka, there's a two-way intersection to get onto Old Stonington Road, just past you can see the Dog Watch Cafe barbecue, and that's the way you would access in. After you come in on this direction, you can continue down. You got the fire station on your right as you get past, and then Lamb's Way, the residential development is up in this area. There's only, a one-way out. This is David. We said it was one way in. I'm sorry.
One way in. The one by Wilcox Road is one way in.
Yeah.
You're not supposed to exit from there, and it looks narrower, as you can see.
Mm-hmm.
The big Y end is both an entrance and an exit off of Old Stonington. Yeah, there you go. You can see the.
Yep. The arrow's just in. So I'm sorry. So if you're coming westbound, you can take the one way in to dump you onto the residential properties, or you can follow it all the way up to the commercial properties further up, or you can come in on the other side. So there's two ways in, but there's only one way back out at this intersection on the side.
So there are two ways you can come from both sides to get to this restaurant? Or
Yes.
no? Yes,
Yep, if you're coming eastbound or south or eastbound, you can turn in and come in this way, or if you're coming from the other direction from Pakitaka, you can come one way in. It's
Well-
just that it's only one way out on the north.
Okay.
Northwest side.
okay, all right. Because you just don't want to have a bottleneck occur, right? Basically. Yeah.
Correct.
All right, I'll have to drive down there and take a look at that. And then, do they have a theme yet?
No, he's been pretty tight-lipped on that. Doesn't have anybody yet.
Okay,
My client is not he will not be operating the restaurant, but he has some people interested to be confirmed, I guess you could say.
okay. Because it was like family style or something, that would be encouraging. And then the season, so the tents, I think when we make our letter of recommendation, the tents are really going to be seasonal, right? Basically.
Yeah, outdoor vending lends itself to
Yeah.
better weather.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be probably mostly spring, summer, and fall.
Yeah.
I would think farmers markets might be there, and other folks that are sell their wares.
Yeah. So that might be, phrasing it as a seasonal market, a flea market, or farmers market or whatever, that would probably be a good thing to do, is to frame it that way.
Certainly.
All right, and the dog agrees with that. And that's it for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Suzanne. Rich?
I would just say I think that it's great that it really utilizes the site to, the way that it is now, that it's not, the fact that you're not going to add any additional parking stress to the street as it is. To me, I think the tents are a great ancillary use to the property, and it just helps kind of drive, some more vibrancy down to that area. And again, I think it'll just help the restaurant. So I think that overall the plan, I think, works well, and I think that it's great to see that property getting redone. So thank you.
Good. Pete?
Looks good. I just had a quick question. Like, there's a kind of a dirt parking road, like when you first, like next to where you pull into Lamb's Way. Is that just like does anyone own that? I'm just curious about that.
Across from the fire station.
Yeah, appears to be part of the town right of way.
We're just curious about that, whether that gets used or what.
So it gets used for parking when there's a meeting on at the Clombog Fire District.
Right.
And then Joe Dondero sets up a little tent underneath the tree in the bottom right-hand corner on Tuesday and Saturday afternoons, or Friday afternoons. Yeah, right there. And then people, and he's basically a farm from up north, and then people park there and then walk across to where his tent is.
Interesting.
Other than that, I think any questions I had have been addressed by the other folks, so it looks good to me. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Pete. John?
Sergio, great presentation. I do have a question for you, and this is not to be negative. The questions I have, you have 76 parking spaces for this building?
Let me just double check here. Did my screen change?
Yeah.
Yes, you did.
Okay, good. Okay, so
78.
78.
78 spaces, the way I have them
Yes.
laid out right now.
No, that's fine. So you have 78 spaces, 30, you need 30 spaces for the 6 tents or the 6 vendors. And I think you said it was going to be a 100-person restaurant. Is that correct?
100 seats, correct.
100 seats. What I would do, be very clear in case the conversation comes up from the police chief or the police commission. Just, I would lay that out because you do have more than enough space and it is not your problem what happens. I mean, I've been at Dog Watch when they've had a lot of traffic and parking is an issue. I would lay that out explicitly in your presentation that you have more than enough to serve your needs. And probably the issue you're going to have is making sure people don't park in your space that go to Dog Watch when the restaurant's open. So I don't think there's an issue, but I'd be very clear and explicit that you don't have an issue. You satisfy the vendors, which are going to be a demand driver for you. You satisfy the 100 seats at the restaurant, and I would be explicit. And I think this is a great plan because it's a shame for me to have to seen that for the last 4 or 5 years empty.
And actually, the not to drop, but the restaurant actually had a capacity of 250 people, according to the fire marshal, and I have that approval. So, I mean, we're going with a modest 100 seats just to meet the zoning requirements. Now that could have been some standing room capacity as well, but at one point you could fit almost, more than twice as many, 2.5 times what we're expecting as far as the number of seats go for the restaurant.
Oh, interesting.
That's all I had, Dave.
Thanks, John. Colin.
Yeah, quick question. What kind of development work are you expecting to do on the site itself?
As far as the renovations go?
Yes.
Yeah, so mostly it's going to be facade improvements, new paint, possibly some siding on the front of the building. I believe there'll be some interior renovations. As far as the outside goes, we're proposing a new landscape plan because the landscaping is just in a very neglected state. The signage is also going to have to be improved. But for the most part, I think the parking lot will be, get rid of all the grass growing out of it, and it'll be resealed, restriped. So going to trying to keep it. We're not going to repave the whole. I don't think my client's planning on repaving the whole parking lot at this time. Just to get it, just enough to get it looking back in good shape, so that he can start renting it out to a restaurateur that and the restaurateur may do some additional improvements that he ends up leasing out to.
Is there any opportunity for, I think the plus for Dog Watch is, they're on the road, so there's some natural sign, they've got signage, there's, sort of as you're driving by, there's a restaurant there. What, if any, opportunities exist for sort of better visibility from the main Stonington Road for people to this restaurant?
That I don't know. We don't control any property on that side, so my client would have to work a deal out with either the Densmore property or with the folks at Dog Watch. I don't think they're going to be direct competitors with Dog Watch. I don't anticipate that he's going to open up, say another barbecue restaurant. I think it'll be along the lines of more something like Downtown Mystic offers, like an S&P or like a Bravo or Shipwright's Daughter, one of those restaurants, something like that. So it's I don't know if there's any opportunity for any signage.
Okay. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thanks, Colin. Okay, thank you very much, Sergio. I think we've had gathered some information. We've had some good questions and answers, and so I'll make a motion to offer a letter of support to planning and zoning. It could be on June 22nd to support the applicant for both, for the restaurant and getting this this property unstuck and filled and lights on and everything and fences taken down and beautified, and also in support of the diversifying his economic opportunity by including the outdoor vending. So that's a motion. Is there a second?
Kevin Bowdler will second.
Okay. All in favor? I'll go quickly around the room. Kevin?
Yes.
I'm in favor, so it's yes for me. Jim?
Nice presentation, sir. Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes, great thing to do.
Rich?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
John? John may have left if John's still here.
Nope. I'm still here, yes.
Okay. And Cullen?
Yes.
Okay, so the record shows all in favor, none opposed, none abstained. And so Sergio will prepare a letter of support and be ready to speak at the planning and zoning and support for your client. So thank you very much again, and we wish him the best of luck.
Great, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity and the endorsement, and we'll look forward to the meeting on the 22nd. Hopefully, we'll be on that agenda. Thank you.
Yep, you got it. All right, next on the agenda I had was I put the word brainstorm, but I don't think we're really going to brainstorm tonight. But it's just, Danielle spoke to me and said that there's going to be, come the summer, 3 planning and zoning slots coming up. And I can't off the top, I know David Rathbun is one of the folks that's going to be off. Maybe Susan Cullen knows the other 2, but there's going to be, David will create a giant hole in that PZC. And so, Danielle would like to see, some active recruitment for folks that could dedicate themselves to all the challenges that being on a planning and zoning commission brings to the table. So, from my observation, it's really important for commissioners to read the great report that Keith puts together, which is best in class meeting report. It explains everything, and be able to stick to their lane too. So there's sometimes at planning and zoning there can be a lot of personal opinion in the guise of representing some unknown person or constituency. I think it's really good if planning and zoning commissioners understand their role. So we would want to encourage folks that have a lot of energy and kind of understand what the role requires to be a part of this. So, for purposes of this agenda item, I guess if there's anybody on the Economic Development Commission that would like to be promoted to planning and zoning, then that I'd support that. So I'm looking at you, Rich. No, I'm only kidding. And then so that would be one thing. By all means, if any of you folks who I know understand the challenges that a planning and zoning commission faces and would be great for that commission. I think just in general, and Jason used to say this all the time, P and Z stand for 2 different words, planning and zoning. And so often our PZC takes a very strict regulatory zoning approach and don't put on their planning hat. So, to get folks that are oriented more towards careful planning of what we want Stonington to be, not so much what the regulation, I think that outdoor vending is a really good example, right? So, not so much what the regulations are, trying to tie our hands to do, but what we want Stonington to be would be really good. So if anybody in this group is interested, please put your hat in the ring. And then I guess second of all, if everyone could be thinking about a candidate, and let's just, stay in touch with me and let me know of any candidates that anybody thinks of. It's a tough role. It's a tough role in this town, and I think in general, it's a tough role. So the individual has to be strong-willed and really want to try to do what's best for the town. Are there any comments or questions on that before we move on?
Dave, if I could just jump in for 1 second. I also want to point out, maybe for Elsie's benefit, since she hasn't been here with us before, we did get half of our money for the zoning regulations approved in terms of the CIP for this next year. So whoever is, sitting on that Planning and Zoning Commission is going to have a big role in what the future of the town looks like and helping us to craft those regulations. So that's going to be a very important lift for whoever those new people are coming in. And Keith and I have talked a great deal about having more consistent training for our across about ex parte communication, Robert's Rule of Order 6 of, just to run a how people follow the consistency of both our POCD and the regulations, and making sure that folks are really well informed. We always talk about how happy we are to have our longstanding volunteers, but when there is turnover, it is a good idea for us to make sure that our trainings and our information is up to date and that we're bringing people in who are well aware of the rules that we play by.
Mm-hmm. Great additional information, Susan. Thank you so much for that. And so I'm going to invite any other comments and questions. I think Jim might have been stepping up to the plate.
Yeah, who are the other two people that are going to be leaving the zoning board? Which two candidates?
Susan, do you know? I can't remember. I just know David Rathman's one of them.
David Rathman's the one that I know as well. I can definitely ask tomorrow of who else is coming up in the.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Dave is very pro-development, but and I think very balanced that way. Depending on who's coming off, that'll make a big difference.
It's not anybody who you'd want to come off, Jim.
I that's what I'm thinking. I mean,
Yeah.
It's got to be Gardner's been on forever.
I think it might be Gardner and
Spielberg.
I don't think so. I
Lynn
want to
hasn't
say
been on that long.
I want to say Peter Chamowitz.
Oh, I thought he was just appointed not too long ago.
Yeah. Let me find out, and I will send an email out to everyone as a follow-up.
Dave, one name that just came to mind was, would Blackwood consider doing it?
Yeah, Danielle and I spoke about that, and I'm going to call him. I meant to do it last week, so I need to call him.
He would be outstanding.
Any other comments, questions?
I guess if we could think of a business person, I'm trying to think. Actually, I don't know the backgrounds of everybody who's on planning and zoning, but if there's someone who I think diversity of background and thought would be ideal. And sometimes when I infrequently listen to the discussion of planning and zoning, then so not only is there not the planning bit, but there it also seems to be we want to live in this this perfect world where we can have everything, but revenues or development and change won't happen. And unfortunately, those two things have to go together. But there seems to be maybe sometimes some naivety that you can just say no to everything, but also tax revenues will continue to increase, and services don't need to be expanded or cost more.
Right.
Okay, Dave, I sent a message to Keith to ask so that we were just clear on who it was who was coming off, and he did respond. Gardner Young and David Rathbun, the chair, and one of the alternates, Peter Chamowitz, has just resigned.
Oh, that was it. It was a resignation, Jim. I think you're right. I don't know why he resigned, but
I think he was appointed like in the last year or so, year and a half.
yeah, so he resigned for some reason. So whatever that reason was, we're losing David, Gardner, and Peter. Okay? Very good. Any other comments or questions before we move on? All right, let's see if we can help Danielle and help the town by coming up with some good candidates. All right, now we're going to move into the part of our program where we review our projects underway. So I'm going to go down the list, and the first one, and so the purpose of this part of the meeting is to update the EDC on any progress made in between meetings on any of our projects, and also request any, if there's a vote required for anything, so any decision that needs to be made that we would feel like we'd want to take a vote to show that we have EDC support of, or spend any, of our budget money, which is taxpayer money, we would take a vote for that. So the first project is a circus lot acquisition / master plan and unstick the doll oil lot, and that's Jim.
Okay, Dave already spoke about the meeting, the joint meeting, and talked a little bit about that. So Dave, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that anymore, or I think we kind of, there's not much there except what ended up happening there was the Board of Selectmen weighed in on it, wanted to weigh in and see what our efforts were to date, and I think they were. My thought is they were satisfied by that, Dave. I mean, it was a good informative meeting.
Yeah,
also,
we provided a little bit, Jim provided a little bit, sorry, Jim. Jim provided a little bit of a vision just so that we're all marching to, kind of on the same sheet of music and not stepping on other toes. So, especially with the circus lot where there's a lot of potential there. We want to make sure this was just assert this is an EDC project. So, let's work together and the EDC will take the lead.
So another thing that happened in between meetings is that there was a meeting with the Wood River Watershed folks. And there were a number of people, and Dave, if you could try to remember the task, I guess.
Fred Wagner.
What's that? Yeah. Fred Wagner, who is the Pakitaka representative, or the Sterlington representative on the Wood River Watershed Association, and Cass, who's the managing director of it.
Yeah.
And a full-time employee based on. So the way that works is because it's one of the, I believe, 7 rivers that are designated wild and scenic, with federal, I believe they get federal funds every year. And that helps fund a permanent staffing of that organization to augment their volunteer effort. So these guys would like to get involved, and it appeared pretty unanimous that they love the site. Dave, I don't know what your read. I didn't hear anything.
Yeah.
They seem to want to wade into, no pun intended, developing this the circus lot as a park. One of the things we pitched to them is that there's a less desirable piece of the property that is, I guess, to the west side of it, or to the southwest side of it, and that could be used to augment the 2 acres of frontage lot on Route 2 and provide, let's say, if it was residential, a buffer between the commercial zone and that. Again, for the circus lot team, we're still trying to define what the project's going to be. And I think, the last month helped to define what that effort will be in terms of what the plan is we want to develop. Again, before this, it would probably have been hitting a moving target a little bit. So we will proceed in earnest. I think we have some definition on that and some general buy-in on the concept of using part of the circus lot as a buffer, non-park or non-public use. So again, I think we could develop that concept more fully now. We seem to have some general buy-in from both the Board of Selectmen and even the Wood River Watershed folks. The most desirable part of the property, because they are of the river, is the part near the river. The part near the river is the part that is less valuable for development because it's in the worst part of a flood zone. It has wetlands at the edge. One of the other things that was determined during this month period in between the meetings is that there don't appear to be a significant amount of wetlands on the site. One would think that the proximity of the river and the general elevation of the site, which is only a few feet above sea level, would lead to a lot of wetlands. Because the area has been disturbed over the years, been partially filled, been clear cut, and so on and so forth, it doesn't have some of the natural wetland features you would see as if it was less disturbed by man over the years. So it appears that there is not a significant amount of wetlands. And a number of people walk the sites. I know Sue Cullen was there. I know Dave was there, as well as a half a dozen people from the Wood River Association. So it appears like there was some general consensus that, hey, this site near the river is the most valuable. The triangle adjacent to the frontage lots is not as valuable. So now we can look to explore potential public-private options, including sale of that property to help fund what Wood, or partially fund what Wood River might want to do as stewards of a public use park, complete with things like kayak access and all sorts of great stuff. So, if we can put a plan together that can get, something beyond conceptual buy-in, and that's what the team is really going to be tasked to do now. And I think we now know that. So that's my update on that, Dave. If you'd like to add something, you were at everything too.
Just that, Jim, you can explain how you've made progress on getting, a contract going for a survey, and that's, an important next step.
Okay, so thank you, Dave. And it took quite a while and a lot of emails, but the survey has been the request for survey that we voted on a couple of meetings ago has been now approved by the town and funded 100% by town resources. It'll be 50% EDC budget and 50% Board of Selectmen budget. The selectmen did not want a private party involved in helping to fund that. I can understand where they're coming from, although to me, the only logical suitor is really the adjacent property lot owner. But if the town, if the Board of Selectmen felt that way, I think that's fine. I still have concerns over not doing a phase 2 on this at this point. I think we need to do a phase 2 on the property because, again, it has been touched by man quite a bit and was adjacent to a service station. But, after the survey comes, and by the way, the owner, Bruce Thomas, of the 2-acre frontage lot, committed to do a survey at the same time. So we should have the ability to stitch together the two surveys. They're both going to be done by Sergio, so Sergio's company. So the ability to stitch those two together to form some sort of idea of how the properties flow into each other is going to be a little bit easier because of that. So all positive. And I think that's it.
Jim, do you anticipate calling a meeting of your team together? And again, I would invite all the EDC, but we do have quite a few folks that are interested. Do you anticipate calling a meeting before our next regular meeting?
Yes, I do. And I think it's important for all the EDC folks to walk the site who want to be part of the subcommittee. So now that the weather's a little bit better and a little bit drier, we're through April, I think that's more appropriate. I think that's where we start. And I think meetings outdoors right now, where we are with COVID and so on, is more appropriate anyway.
Okay, we'll look forward to seeing something organized, Jim. Yep. Before we move on, any questions or comments for Jim? And I won't make a round, we can just speak out.
Dave, can I just ask Jim to fill in a quick question for me? I know you talked about the survey, but there's also wetland delineation that was going to go on. And I was curious if that was going to come back in the same timeline as the surveying. I know that has to be done, sort of as a subset, but I wasn't sure if that was going to all be put together or if that's coming in sort of a separate package.
Okay, great question, Sue. All right, so when Trentia Associates quoted this in 2020, they quoted one line item as just the A2 survey. Topographic, which is very important because the topography of this does change and it as it meanders down to the water. So so that is one line item. The second line item was they're subcontracting to a soil engineer to do a full wetlands marking and survey. The information that was provided to the Board of Selectmen was a preliminary letter from that soil scientist who walked the site kind of as a preliminary just to see where we were at. And his preliminary determination that was not a whole lot of wetlands there based on his observation of vegetation and soil and so on and so forth, and the little bit of investigation. That'll be more formalized and be quantified in a normal wetland survey. Interesting part to the group is that the wetlands overlay on the GIS was somewhat incorrect on this, at least at first blush. And did not match the AES soil maps that overlay the same area from some of the national databases. So I think it's important when you look at wetlands on the GIS in the future for anybody who's looking and evaluating projects that maybe have to take a second look, because some of that database information on the Sterlington GIS may not be absolutely correct depending on where exactly you're talking.
Do you think that's the case because of the filling the property over the years? I mean, since in Connecticut, it's really about the soils, and because soils were sort of removed and added in that area, that maybe that's why it's so significantly different?
I don't have the expertise to answer that question. I don't know.
I'm just curious.
I know that the soil was disturbed. I'm not sure how that changes the characterization of the wetlands.
Any other questions or comments for Jim? Okay, thanks, Jim. The next on our list is the Mechanic Street Mills, and Rich is this team lead for that. There's been no activity as yet. Rich, do you have any thoughts or plans you want to share at this point?
Not at this point, but we will for the next meeting. Finally coming up to take a breath after PPP is passed for the small business relief. So looking to get that started in this next month. Okay,
great. And just as an idea, checking in with Keith or Susan to see if there's been any activity on Threadmill South in particular, because I think there was some interest there. I don't know if it's traded or not, but I also think the Harris Mill may also be on the verge, if not having been sold. So that would be a good place for us to start, is making some contacts if that's the case.
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks. The next is the Pakitaka River Greenway Phase 1, and that's would be important to characterize it that way. That's the section in between, and it's, all of these are part and parcel to our downtown Pakitaka revitalization vision. So this would connect Donahue Park to Route 1. And I met with Tony Nenna, who's the principal of on-site engineering. He would propose to do the work that DACO was to have done for us almost 2 years ago now, and then backed out, leaving us greatly in the lurch. And so then COVID happened, making it very difficult to move forward at all. Through some contacts, I became aware of this outfit who's out of Westerly. Tony came and looked at all the ins and outs of that area and what would it take to do survey and permitting, and he has just completed or provided a draft of a proposal that would fit within our budget. And if the EDC recalls, we had $20,000 that is part of a CIP set aside for this. So we want to get the survey and permit work done. Which would also provide enough engineering information to get some cost estimates. That gets us into an area where we have we can be more shovel ready and apply for grants, because we'll be able to, on grant applications, be able to cite what the total costs are and provide some plans. So we're really excited that that's moving forward. A next step for me is to begin to form a team that would help push that forward. And so we have a lot of EDC folks interested in this, but I think what we'll need to do is get when it gets down to fundraising and grant applications, is get a more dedicated team. So I'm thinking about that. The next and the final one on our Pakitaka area is the pedestrian bridge engineering design. So Jim, I don't think there are any updates, but do you have an update that you want to share with the group?
I don't have an update right now. What I really want to do with the group is, again, have them on site and walk the site. Before that, it's going to be very difficult. And I wanted to ask the group, while most of them are here, is that what is the earliest each person on the group, and I'm gonna read it off here. That would be Dave, Kevin, Suzanne, Virginia, Pete, and Chris. I guess, I'm sorry, Chris is no longer, so it would just be Pete. What is the earliest people could meet, now that the weather is nice, in downtown Pakitaka to do a half-hour to 1 hour walkthrough of the location? Anybody? I just want to hear it. 5 o'clock, 5:30. I just want to, those who
It'd do 5 o'clock would be good. That's fine with me.
5 o'clock?
I was going to say 7:30, but I'll back up to like 7 o'clock.
7 o'clock is what I said.
But not on Fridays.
We're not going to do it on a Friday. But 7 o'clock is the earliest you'd want to go? Okay.
No, listen, if everyone wants to do it at 6:30, I'll be there at 6:30.
Okay, so you want to push it a little bit later. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, now that we're past daylight savings and the days are getting a little longer, that's. Anyone else comment on this?
I'm good.
I'm not in the tribe, but I would like to attend anyway.
We'd love to have you. It's an interesting project, and siting of the bridge defines property ownership. Property ownership defines who you have to ask for permission. So
Jim,
these are the first logical steps.
Jim, is that AM or PM?
That's PM.
I was hoping AM.
That's PM. I was trying to get people after work when it's nice out.
Okay.
So
I misunderstood. I thought we were talking in the morning.
Kevin thought you meant AM.
Yeah.
Okay. So okay, let's do PM. Let's try again.
Yeah.
No restrictions.
I was going to say 6 a.m. and then Pete came out with 5, and I was like, damn, I'll wake up at 5 a.m. if I have to.
You must really want this, yeah. So I'm sorry.
6 p.m. would be good, huh?
6 p.m. just because of the business. I just want to ask people who are doing various things. Let's do so 6 p.m. Does anybody object to 6 p.m. as a time to meet then? Outside, no masks probably needed for most of it.
No objection.
How's that sound?
Sounds good.
Yep.
Okay, I'll put something out.
Agreed.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Jim, I know you mentioned Chris, who's no longer a member of the EDC, but he did want to participate on these sub teams as an ad hoc member. So just we'll do our best, but we want to try to invite him to the meeting that you're talking about.
I know Chris cares deeply about the Pakitaka renewal as well. So I and whatever he does in his future, we'll try to make it so that he can attend. Okay.
Yeah. Very good.
All right.
Yeah. Just I'm reminding myself as much as you, believe me. Okay. Next on the list, we have our townwide project. So the stuck property analysis. That's something that Cullen was going to lead. We're on sticking properties in spite of ourselves, Cullen. Any thoughts or ideas
Yes.
about how you might like to organize that effort?
Yes. So I think I've got a few people who wanted to sort of be involved in sort of the breaking out the town and surveying it together. So I've got those people. I just have to set up who's going to do what. Is there a good, I guess my only main question before I do that is there a good sort of central place, whether it's like a town Google Docs or something like that I should use, or I mean, I'm happy to come up with our own sort of repository for all of this information, but wasn't sure if there was more of a central town place I should be using. So I'm thinking like as people are making notes, taking pictures of sites, phone numbers of real estate agents, that kind of stuff, I'd rather have, you know, if there's a central place to do that, great. If not, I'll probably do a Google kind of Excel myself.
We have a Google, what do you call it? Google
Drive, and I know right now then, Colin, you've got access to it, but let me send you the link, and then you can just create your own folder within that for your project.
Yep.
Cool.
That's it. Thank you, Kevin. Okay, thanks, Colin. And just as a reminder, you know, for Jim for organizing a walkabout, and for Colin, if you're meeting with folks, meetings to abide by FOIA, we need to post those agendas and minutes. So they can be very simple. They can be basically one-liners when we're having these subcommittee meetings. It's highly unlikely that we have quorums anyway, and we're going to report out at these regular meetings anything that comes of the sub-team meetings, but just remember to do that so we don't get in trouble. Okay, the
Dave, who's the person to email to do that?
So, you know, use one of my agendas or minutes as a template. Take out the body, put your own in there. If you want to send me a draft and say, does this look fine? I'll help you with that on your, you know, on the first time around. It can be very simple for these sub-team meetings. If you look at the ones Kevin has done, he's kept it very simple to do that, and they're all posted. And it's Cheryl Sadowski, who is, you know, works with Susan. I send all the agendas and minutes to her. You've probably seen on some of my emails, Susan or Cheryl, please have the agenda or minutes posted. And so she takes care of it at Town Hall.
Cool. Okay, thank you.
Yep. Comprehensive zoning update. Susan, do you want to say anything about that, or?
I think we touched on it earlier, but just to, you know, throw it out there that we did get half of the money in this year's CIP. We fought very hard to keep that money, and it is a pretty large chunk of money. We wanted to make sure that we were able to get going forward very quickly. And almost all of the other smaller goals we had were all impacted by the rewrite of those zoning regulations. So Keith and I felt together that that was, you know, across the entire department, that was the most important thing that we could do. When I first came, it's been almost exactly a year ago, one of the first questions that I asked Keith was how many small little fixes or band-aids were on his list. He got up to 40 and then he stopped counting for me. And we decided that really, you know, once you get past a certain point of band-aiding, there just really is no point in keeping going with the band-aiding. So we made a really big pitch to our internal staff, who is the first, you know, people who actually get to review all of the CIP submissions. So across all the department heads, and then we went through there to the selectmen, but also in front of the full group. And so we were successful in getting what we wanted. And we got some estimates from towns around us, other towns in Connecticut who've done recent rewrites. We also reached out to a couple of different public consultants to say, you know, you do these all the time. Can you tell us the range? Because we wanted to make sure we put aside enough able to do a really good job and be comprehensive. We're going to live with these for a long time, and we want to make sure that they're really solid. So I'm excited that we got what we asked for and that we're going to be able to head forward. So that's going to be good. I'm looking forward to it, getting started.
Yep. Did you say, and I missed it, but have you identified a consultant yet that would do this?
We have not, because it's only been about a week ago that we made sure all the, you know, approvals for the money were in place.
Okay, so you're starting to look into that. The next item, or any questions for Susan on that, on the zoning update? Nope. All right, the next item is the housing strategy or affordable housing plan. Susan, I'll start and then you can finish up. So Don Poland has written, I think we're on a second draft. It's still being polished. I think there's some, Keith and Susan still have some comments to provide to get it totally shipshape and ready for wider distribution. A date to put on your calendars, and I'll put this in the minutes also, is June 17th. That's when there would be a public meeting to unveil this plan. And the date has just been identified. So Susan can speak to whether or not we want to discuss any other logistical items. But Susan, can you also address, once we get the draft, the final draft, I want to be able to send it to our EDC to look at in a little bit more in-depth coverage than what comes out for the public notice.
Certainly, Dave. So today's May 11th, and we're hoping to have that public June 17th. It's a Thursday night. It's the only night of the month of June, Monday through Thursday, that doesn't have another Stonington public meeting on it in terms of town meetings. So we were trying to make sure we picked a big empty open night. I checked in this morning and graduation is the 18th. So we won't be on top of graduation either. So that's important since we actually are going to have graduation this year. We're trying to identify a venue that we think will be large enough. We do want to put out a big press release and a lot of information and really have people come. This is really going to be the first in-person conversation that we've had throughout this last year. We've had multiple virtual meetings, multiple tasks that we've accomplished with Don Poland in virtual space, but it's really the first time that he's going to be presenting in person since this is past June 1st, which is when the town's going back to in-person meetings. So one of the things that I appreciate a little input on is where we think that venue might most appropriately be, of where would be large enough, a big enough space, but also that people would feel comfortable in, that would have the type of, acoustics, either a stage or some way for Don to really be able to give a formalized presentation, but that folks also felt comfortable in the space, since I think people are probably going to be a little bit hesitant to come back to an in-person meeting. So if people have ideas about that, we talked a little bit about maybe one of, maybe at the middle school in the Board of Education space, because that's a very large space. And we found out that unfortunately that's already been booked for that night. So that's not going to be a possibility. And if graduation is on the 18th, it's unlikely that we can probably get space at the high school, because they're probably going to be having practice runs and award ceremonies on the 17th. So we talked a little bit about maybe going to the Mystic Hoxie Fire Station or going to Pakitaka Fire Station. I had to admit to Dave that I haven't been, because of COVID, into either of the newly redone elementary schools because they haven't really been open. And I'm not sure if either of those newly redesigned gymnasium and stage arrangements would be appropriate for this. So if anyone else has, I'd love to hear your input.
Susan, I'd throw out the Velvet Mill as being a potential option because you don't have to worry about rain. The acoustics are, not bad. And we'd have to figure out, there's two different businesses there. There's one at the front, which is now largely occupied by Beard and Whitecrest. And then there's one, and that may be awkward to be in there. But there's a backspace, which is, I'm going to say it's 10,000 square feet. I think that, but obviously some work would be involved in getting microphones and speakers and chairs and stuff there.
That's a great suggestion. I hadn't even thought of that. So we can definitely check that out and see if that would work. Thank you.
Yeah. And people have felt comfortable there because the ceilings are so high and it's so drafty that the wind goes in one end of the building and comes out the other. So unlike La Bruma Center and some of the auditoriums, which, you know, it's definitely air conditioning that's keeping that there, but the Velvet Mill doesn't have any air conditioning. It's
Naturally air conditioned.
yeah.
Has anybody been inside? I don't know, Cullen, if you have kids in West Vine School, anybody have been inside West Vine or Dean's Mill to see if any of those spaces have been renovated to be amenable to public meetings?
Just a kindergartner, and we haven't been allowed in the school yet as parents. So.
Okay. I guess, you know, we can make some phone calls, Susan, on that. Is there anything else, Susan, that you would like to bounce off the EDC, or any assignments or plans we need to work on?
I'm really excited. The plan so far that I'm about 50% through my review of it, and I'm just really thrilled at the expertise of John Poland, just how well he's stayed on task throughout this whole process, how much information we've gotten for our money. I feel like we've gotten a great value for our money, and that he's really stayed with our deadlines too. So to me, that's very important for us to keep moving this forward. I haven't even heard of anyone else in the area who's as far as we are in establishing our new plan. And I'm excited because it's not just this plan, but it's the actionable items that are coming out of it, and the timing of that and our zoning regulations, and in 2 years, our POCD. So one can flow into the next, can flow into the next. And I think that consistency across all three of those items is going to make a better future and a brighter future for us. So it's sort of thrilling to see it coming, you know, to fruition.
Absolutely. I'm excited about it also. And, you know, I talked to Susan about getting a biggest venue as possible, which, and really with, you know, goaling ourselves to get as many people reviewing it and excited about the plan as we will be. So we'll see how that goes. You know, it's the public can be, you know, not engaged, and so we're going to work hard at getting public engagement. Any comments or questions on the affordable housing plan? And Kevin, an update on the Gateway TC80 effort.
Actually, Dave, just going back to the last one, is it worthwhile giving an update on that the funding didn't come through for the Campbell Grain building under affordable housing?
Yeah, good point. I guess I can't remember if we did that before, but right. So yeah, in this round of funding, because we did not have the town contribution in place, which was going to be funded through a tax abatement, because the town has no other sources. We don't have a housing fund, which will be recommended to create in our affordable housing plan, or even a tax abatement policy that could be used and easily employed. Because we didn't have that in place, we weren't awarded the deal this time from CHAPA. So they're going to go back and resubmit. I don't think it's going to be until January. It's a different deadline for some reason. I don't think it's going to be till January of 2022. But the good news is that Wind Companies is not abandoning ship. You know, so excited about having a $32 million development in downtown Pakitaka and 82 new apartments with people living there, that to have that go away would just be heartbreaking. So, you know, as we develop our communication materials for the public to get support for the tax abatement, it will be important for everyone to understand that to make these deals work, there needs to be a town contribution.
Hey, Dave?
Yeah.
It's Jim. On that, again, since there's a little bit of pause here with the year, and there appears to be already people that have taken notice in the town and they've posted on social media and so on and so forth. I really think if it's about getting the project approved and it's not about profit, okay, if the profit is enough, and I guess I should hold my thoughts on that, but it would be great to see Wynn make a contribution towards some public, again, Riverwalk, pedestrian bridge, contribute some funding to that on the front end when they're getting a tax abatement on the back end. I think that would go a long way to making public sentiment and the resultant town meeting that would have to go on for this go very smoothly for them. So I at this point, especially since there's a little bit of time and pause, maybe that should be looked into again. I'm not sure what the other people in the EDC think about that.
Okay, thanks, Jim. I think, as we begin to move towards there has to be a public hearing for the tax abatement and a town vote. So as we move towards that and develop communication materials in concert with wind companies, we can definitely talk about that and what will make it, what will, give them the best path to success to get the town behind this. Okay, I want to go to
sorry, Dave. Can I just go back now to the topic I was going to talk on briefly, an update on the Exit 90 project?
Did I cut you off? Oh, that's right. Okay,
no, I changed the subject to go back to affordable housing.
Okay.
So we have got a really solid vision document. I got some tremendous input from Suzanne, from John, and from Dan on how to improve the survey questions. And I have gone back and rewritten all the questions. But now I'm doing a review to make sure that those questions basically give us support for every item within the vision document. And then Thomas also sent me that 55-page document that Jason wrote maybe 3 or 4 years ago about his vision for Stonington and planning, in particular, there's areas there around Exit 90. And I haven't had time to go through that document and make sure there's nothing in his document from 3 or 4 years ago that we have missed in the vision document for Exit 90. So between now and the next meeting, I'll distribute the latest survey questions, and I will also and we'll set up a meeting with the subcommittee to then finalize the survey questions and figure out how we're going to execute getting these surveys. So there's 3 different surveys. There's one for visitors, there's one for Stonington residents / taxpayers, and there's another one for business owners within the Exit 90. And we're trying to get different feedback to support our vision from each of those 3 different groups. And obviously we need to get a fair amount of responses back to make it a survey that people will have weight and credibility behind it, and hopefully will then support our case when we then get to what I assume we'll probably agree is to do a community meeting to discuss what we think this vision should be, and then from that hopefully get buy-in to whether it's zoning changes or whether it's in investment from the town around infrastructure, beautification, signage, wayfinding, etc. That is it.
Thanks, Kevin. Sorry to lose track there. Any comments, questions for Kevin on what's happening with that effort? All right. Thanks again. For the individually driven efforts, I'm going to probably skip all of them except for the cultural district item, which Pete has done some considerable work and effort collaborating with Wendy Burry, who heads up the Southeastern Connecticut Cultural Coalition. And she met with us last month to provide information on how we might consider and potentially set up a cultural district or districts within Stonington. So Pete was going to, as of last meeting, Pete was going to try to digest all the information that Wendy downloaded on us and come back to the EDC with a proposal for next steps. And so, Pete, I'm going to hand the floor over to you so that you can speak about what you think we ought to do and what the EDC ought to support.
Thanks, Dave. If anyone has not seen the talk that Wendy gave, I would just go to this town YouTube channel and check it out when you can. And just fast forward to when she starts. And wasn't really that long, so that's worth it. So this is not an unfunded thing, and I just want to set the expectations. If we become a cultural district, there's no like pile of money that drops from the sky or anything, So, but it's, I think it's a good thing to at least consider pursuing. And I've talked to Danielle, and seems like it's, in her opinion, a good thing to explore. But there are some wickets to go through the exploratory phase. So I'll just kind of go over that quickly. There's a series of 3 meetings. There are 3 different meetings, and they're open to the public, and we invite people to them. The first one is just an intro session, which would not be that much different than what Wendy went over, like what is a cultural district, and overview stuff. And then the second one would be similar to, then you'd wait a week or maybe 2 weeks, then you'd have the second one. The second one is a visioning kind of exercise, like the stuff that Jason was so good at doing. What might it look like? Those types of community feedback. Okay, then that's the second one. Then you wait another week or maybe 2. And the third one is you invite the key stakeholders in the town to participate. And that's where the kind of rubber meets the road. And at the end of that, we work with Wendy, and if there's a sufficient interest and it seems feasible, then we maybe go forward. But this is the process we have to go through, is just to see if it's worth doing, at least pursuing. So what happens is there's these 3 meetings that they can be virtual or in person. I think maybe the intro one could be virtual, and then the 2 follow-ons could be live. And we're talking about a month period from the first meeting to the end of the third meeting. So I thought it would be good to at least consider getting this done, but before July and August. But Susan just talked about another meeting with the housing coming up, so I don't want to interfere with anything else going on. But this is if you go back to what Wendy went over, it's a contiguous parcel of land that has certain requirements, and it would seem to me, and I think most people would agree, that downtown Mystic would be something that would, at least be feasible for something to consider. Pakitaka right now, maybe not, according to Wendy, and I would probably tend to agree. But that if you have one, you can always add one later. This is pretty flexible, I think. So there'd be a small cost of supporting the meetings. We'd have to have some lead time to generate the paperwork, advertise it appropriately. A few $100, that kind of thing, to get this thing as far as resources for the town. But of course, Wendy would facilitate it, but we'd have to have EDC and the town participation in some fashion. It remains to be worked out, obviously, but I don't want to go too far down the road unless we feel there's sufficient interest on the commission to at least proceed. But I think it's something to consider pursuing. So if anyone has, that's pretty much all I had. If anyone has any questions or comments, I can answer them or look them up and get back to you.
Pete, for So let's do a round on this. And so Pete, for the first two meetings, the first one being the intro session and the second one a vision exercise, are those public meetings? So who's the target audience? Is it anybody, or because the third one's the key stakeholders, and that would ostensibly be like, gallery owners, artisans, stuff like that, right? Those would be the state, people that run a theater or something. That would be a key stakeholder in this key stakeholder meetings. But what are the first two? Who do we want to show up at those?
Anyone and everyone who can show up.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's an open public forum.
Obviously, if we had first meeting and the second meeting and no one showed up, we kind of have our answer, right? So, so we want to have participation on this thing. So, we want to make it as cast a wide as net as possible. So.
So the purpose of those first two would be to find out from the public if they thought it was worthwhile and something they wanted for the town.
Yeah, I defer to Wendy on that, but that's how I read that. Yeah.
Okay.
I think so. It's important to have, and I don't know what the virtual world. I don't know what's considered a success. I mean, if 6 people show up, is that good enough? I really don't know, but nothing ventured, nothing gained, I guess.
Right.
But we want to be smart about it, and we don't want to. There's Zoom fatigue and graduations, and there's a lot of stuff going on. So it would seem to make sense not to kind of ram this through and not have it be a success. And maybe it makes more sense to be a little more strategic about it with all the other stuff going on. So, but it's going to be like a month-long period, and the soonest it would happen would be possibly June. If not, we'd have to look later in the year.
Yep.
So I have a question, Pete.
Yep.
Can we have Wendy recommend a time schedule for us to do this? Do we want it, that would be a good question for her. Do we want it when, our population balloons in the summer and there's more interest in the arts, I think, in the summer, but people are on vacation and all. That would be something to ask her for her advice on that, I think.
Yeah, her advice was not to do it in July and August. So,
okay.
Yeah.
And should there be, so if we did the first 2 in June, is that good to have it split up and then do something in September, or do September, October?
That's the thing. It has to be a just
consecutive.
It has to be it has to be a consecutive thing. It can either be a week in between each meeting or 2 weeks, but it has to be like a definite start to finish, and we can't have a big gap in the middle. So that's why it becomes either we do it quite soon or we wait and do it in the fall kind of thing.
It would help arts businesses and arts people, because of COVID, they're suffering. It would probably be encouraging for them to see this kind of support coming forward, and maybe more interest from the community to help support them now, versus them postponing it and then have them struggling later.
Yeah, it's going to be important that everyone knows about it too, right? So we don't want to just spring, hey, it's tomorrow. Hope you can make
right.
it, So and then no one shows up, and then we've kind of defeated the purpose of it. So we have to be a little bit strategic about it. But I do think it would be good to do it fairly soon, but not if it's going to hurt the numbers, I guess.
Mm-hmm. What if we
you and I'm sorry, Suzanne.
I was going to say maybe we can use the media to, the Westerly Sun or the Day to, present this to the community and get that's people to come out for it.
Yeah, I agree, and that's all something that Wendy would help us kind of navigate through that. But there's, they're going to need a couple of weeks just to get that.
Yeah.
Just to get it enough advertising so people hear about it a couple of times, they don't forget about it, so, but yeah, all media outreach would be certainly a good idea.
Yeah.
Do you want to give me a call and maybe we could get Wendy on a conference call this week and sketch out some timetables or available times, available venues, and see what, practically speaking, we can make happen? And then we can back out from there to press releases and information and trying to make sure that we, like you said, get the word out there. We've also been very successful recently with our Facebook and our Instagram. So that's another venue for us to get more information out there as well. So let's have a call with her and see what the timeline looks like. And
Okay.
go from
Yeah,
there.
I didn't, I really don't know the mechanics of what's reasonable to do. It's just, but if we were going to do it, July and August, at least in Wendy's opinion, are kind of out. So it's either going to be kind of soon or we wait, so unfortunately that's the position we're in. But yeah, I will definitely give you a call soon and we'll work something out. So.
So can I just add a couple of points? So Pete, so first of all, I think this is a great idea. So even though there's no direct correlation between economic development and this, I think that towns and vibrant communities feel good about themselves because they're known for this or they're known for that. And I think Stonington, and in particular Stonington Borough, which I'd put a plug in for to be a cultural district as well, I think it helps support house prices or second home prices. And Michaela Hall, who is the new executive director of the Stonington Free Library, chairs a monthly meeting of Stonington nonprofits. And Wendy obviously could introduce you, but I'll send an email to you and copy in Michaela, because I think maybe it'd be worthwhile for you to attend their next meeting. And then when I think in Stonington Borough, you've got the Stonington Historical Society, you've got La Grua, you've got the James Merrill House, you've got Ness, and each one of these organizations has a 12 to 20 person board of directors. So I think that your goal really should be, how do you get this group of people to largely do all the work, and you basically do as little as possible other than facilitate, here's what we need to do when we need to do it. They'll be all over this, and they've got such a big vested interest in wanting to work with you. And obviously we've got the Lighthouse Museum a little bit further down towards the point. Maybe a bit more of a stretch was Eric at the Velvet Mill wanted to get his name up on the signs on 95, which this might help us. So we've got historic Stonington Borough, but if you are if you're a cultural district, then I think it adds some weight to whether you can get signage on 95 to get people to be able to get off it, and that would definitely have some economic benefit to us in the long run.
One thing I neglected to mention, I'm still waiting to hear back from Danielle on that, because I just forgot to ask her. But Sue, I just put that out to you too. So the borough is a great location. The other one would be downtown Mystic, potentially. But people don't realize it's kind of like two Mystics, the Groton Mystic. So if we made it like one thing, that would mean we have to kind of team up with Groton. And that seems feasible, but I don't know the politics and the mechanics of all that kind of stuff. And
I think that is feasible. We could reach out to our partners in Groton. We're doing 2 other projects with them right now that are in the Mystic area that, bisect the border. So I don't think there's any concern about partnering up again for that. I know that Paige Bronk in Groton already works with Wendy Bird on several other things. So they might already be sort of set up to do something in conjunction with us.
Okay. I'd be curious to see just informal poll here. I mean, part of it was like, what if we're going to pick one, which one do we pick? Or maybe that's too premature, but I mean, obviously Kevin is the borough guy. Any other comments or anything that would be, I mean, I like the borough. I like downtown Mystic. So any,
Pete, I have, I had a question, but what my question, and Kevin, maybe you can answer, is because the borough sort of is its own entity, would we have jurisdiction to actually, you know, propose a cultural district for the, how does that get resolved? You know,
I think that's probably a good question, Dave, but I can assure you there'd be no resistance at the borough level to this idea. But yeah, it's probably on the list then if you do want to do the borough, that it needs to, you know, be presented to the warden and burgesses.
okay. And also to Kevin, you mentioned, so Pete, you have two offers, which I thought were really excellent offers. The one from Susan to team up with Wendy to work out the logistics, and so take advantage of that. And then the other one was from Kevin's suggestion about some boards that, you know, create like this really big network to make these meetings a success, which, you know, you aim to do. So Kevin, could you just repeat for me which boards they were?
So there's a group called the Sterlington Nonprofit Roundtable.
Oh, okay.
And it's basically a monthly meeting where they get together and they discuss what are the things which are mutually beneficial to all of them. And Michaela Hall who's the executive director for the Sterlington Free Library is I call it the chairperson of that informal group.
Okay.
So one person from each of the nonprofits is technically there, and it sort of goes everything from the Dennis and Pequot House to Stanton Farm. So it's basically any nonprofit in the town of Sterlington, but they'll cover everything, obviously, in these groups that we're looking to get here. And Michaela's got a good network, so I'll send an email to Michaela and introduce you to her, Pete. And I'm trying to think, did we get that presentation from Wendy in a digital copy? Because it may be worthwhile for Wendy, if she hasn't, to come to that meeting and do a presentation.
Yeah. I've actually went to one or two of those meetings, Kevin. So I've met her. I've sort of met Michaela, but yeah, by all means, I'll see if I can get a copy of it from. Well, I mean, I'll ask her if she'd be willing to give a copy or show up. Okay, that's cool. That's good stuff.
I did ask her at the meeting, and she never sent it. But as you know, Pete mentioned, he just simply watched the presentation on the YouTube, on the town YouTube, on the recording for the meeting. So that had all the slides in it. So that's available also if we don't get it.
Right.
All right. Well, let's do a round. Pete requested we do a round and a show of support or not. I'll call the round. And I'll go first. And so first of all, thanks, Pete, for looking into this in depth and working with Wendy. And to me, it's definitely worthwhile to do the 3 meetings to see if it is something that the community wants. So I would say let's do those. Let's invest in doing those 3 meetings. Kevin.
I'd be very supportive.
Jim.
Agree.
Suzanne.
Yep, definitely.
Rich had to leave. Pete, I guess I'm going to imagine you're going to support.
Actually, I don't support him.
Okay. All right, strike that from the record. We'll have to, anyway.
Yes, I support it. Yeah, of course.
Yep. All right, very good. John Godin had to leave. Cullen. There's a big thumbs up from Collins. So, Pete, that looked like resounding support to me. So it looks like the next, a really good next step will be to take Susan up on her offer and work with her and Wendy to set up the logistics. And it's exciting. I think it's really cool.
Yeah, I think it's cool too. I think it'll, you know, I have a personal interest in the art stuff. So, and there's a lot of talented and cool people and things in Stonington. It'd be cool to have a group of people that make it a little more official, I guess. So,
right. And, you know, Kevin, you talked a little bit about the economic value, and, you know, Wendy had that in her presentation. I can't, but there is a multiplier with promoting the arts, and she'll tell you. Okay,
So
yep, go ahead.
I guess one other thing, and I can talk with Susan, but if we have I was thinking maybe the first meeting could be a Zoom thing, but the other two would be at a place, and I think it would be nice to have it at a place that looks cool and artsy. I mean, just so it has the same vibe, or maybe in the place that we're thinking about having the cultural coalition. That would kind of make sense. So I guess that'll all be part of it, but any ideas are appreciated. So
since we won't have a meeting until our next meeting is June
15.
Our next meeting is actually June 8th. And because, there's a chance you might organize one of these meetings where you want to spend some money, Pete. I'm going to propose a motion that we approve up to $500 for either venue rental or refreshments to help make these meetings a success. And I'm open to amending that motion if somebody thinks, because I just pulled $500 out of the air. This would be for meetings 2 and 3.
I'd second that proposal.
Any comments on that?
Nope.
All right, so the record will show that we authorize spending $500 of our EDC budget to support your efforts, Pete. So use that money wisely.
Will do. Thank you. It's already spent.
The only other item on the agenda is in-person meetings have been okayed by the town to start as of June 1st. What I'm going to do is either in a separate email when I send out the minutes, request or just announce that we are going to move to in-person. And I'll ask if everybody's comfortable with that. And if anybody isn't, they should let me know. And I'm hoping that we can have in person, and they're carefully looking at having, picking the correct venues with enough space so we can get the spacing and all that kind of stuff. It's like, we had been set up to go to the old Pakitaka Middle School or the district office building. So we're going to be promoted from the Human Services conference room to, an improved venue. And then what's been proposed is to use a conference room in the Pakitaka Neighborhood Center. So that's, I said that would be okay. So that we'd be good with that. So that's likely where the venue will be. So that's info pass on that, and that'll all be made clear before the next meeting.
Dave, I would just add that that's far closer to Dairy Queen, so I think that's probably an upgrade.
It's also closer to CC's.
There you go.
True.
All right, I'll do one round if there's any last will and testimony before we adjourn. So Kevin, anything else to add before we adjourn?
Oh, no, but I'd ask Susan, then I hope that you forwarded to us by email this morning on our Facebook page.
You came through garbled. What was the question again?
I posted on the Stonington 649 Facebook page.
Oh, wonderful.
That item that you sent this morning.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I think
Nothing
it's
else.
very good. Yep.
Thanks, Kevin. Jim?
Nothing to add here, Dave.
Okay, Suzanne, any last words?
Yeah, so the document I sent you guys is the Economic Development Administration, the US one, has set new priorities for funding, and sector is going to be following those priorities. So I emailed the document to all of you earlier today. You should look it over so that if you run into businesses that are looking for funding, they should be, you can channel them to sector. You know, they're women-owned business, minority businesses are taking priorities, manufacturing. So anyway, read the whole document. It's really going to make a difference. So right now we've got that happening through sector. We also have PPP2 that a lot of people are benefiting from, a lot of businesses. And then at the town hall, they're doing a lot of Facebooking and Instagram to promote people supporting local businesses. So we're hoping to get businesses back up on their feet. We have lost some, which is sad, but there may be some that can benefit from the sector funding, and it's on a case-by-case basis. So encourage people to go to sector, please.
Thank you, Suzanne. Thanks for looking out for the local businesses. Pete, any last thoughts?
Nope, I'm good. Thank you.
Cullen?
Nothing.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. As usual, we've killed an otherwise useful 2 hours in an EDC meeting, and I thank everyone for sticking with it and participating and attending. So thanks, and enjoy the rest of your evening, everyone. Meeting adjourned.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Dave. Good to see everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, Kevin.